Okay, we got a question on the Discord that I felt was worth addressing just generally because I feel like multiple people could benefit from this answer. So the question was, it was just in the general channel on our little private Discord. It says, I have a workflow right now. I'm rendering to image sequences at half resolution, finding things to tweak, rendering the affected frames, just scrubbing around until I'm okay with things. I've got a crap ton of stuff in this scene. I need to be logging changes in case squirrel or sleep. I'm not sure what you meant there. I'm doing a half-assed job on notes and it's going to bite me in the butt. It has a few times already. What's your workflow like at this stage? So if I'm understanding this question, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about how you're rendering your image sequences. It sounds like you're doing half resolution, which is great for client approval. And you're scrubbing around, making changes, trying to find rendering artifacts, and you just have a lot of stuff in the scene. So maybe it sounds like, I'm reading into this a little bit, but maybe it sounds like, how do I stay organized with so much stuff, so many shots, so much client feedback? So I want to address that. How do we stay organized when we have so much information to deal with? And especially, it could be frustrating when you've put so much work into a series of shots and your client has this little change, like let's move this product to the left a little bit. And it can be really frustrating if you have a cascading kind of domino effect. If it's like, I can't change that one thing without going in and changing this and this and this and this. So it could be really frustrating. So how do we stay organized in a way that allows us the flexibility to work with our clients in a way that makes us good to work with, and also doesn't drive us insane, having to change everything every time there's a little change? So yeah, again, I'm taking some liberties on your question. Hopefully that's how you meant it. Let me know if you have anything more specific, but let's just jump into it. So with that set up, here is my actual scene. This is an actual client project of mine, so it's very realistic. I don't have an NDA or anything on this. The project's done, it's out there in the world, so I'm free to talk about it. Now this is a fitness company. They make treadmills and ellipticals and other things. So here is the project I had with them. This was showing off one of their new product launches, which in this case is a treadmill. And I'm not going to go over, communicating with clients and stuff. Just know that I had 12 shots. And I started by coming into Blender and building out this initial scene. So I have just a cyc here. I have some lighting. I have a single camera. And then I have the product. So if we jump into the camera view and go to rendered view, you can see there's the product. Things are ready for my first approval. So I'll send a still image of this over to the client. I'll get approval on just the look and feel, so the lighting, the colors. But this particular shot, it's just a hero shot on all products in the line. So this is kind of where I'll start. And this is where I want to get into the first real piece in our optimization organization puzzle. So the first thing I really make sure to use is scenes in Blender. Now this is something that I didn't touch for probably like 14 years of the 15 years I've been using Blender. It always was just confusing to me and intimidating. I would use different blend files for different things, and then I would just try to cram as much stuff as I could into a single blend file. But let me just talk about scenes and why I use them now. So you can find scenes up top here. If you open up a blend file for the first time, you're only going to have one scene. And how do you delete scenes? How do you create new scenes? How do you name scenes? So to name a scene, you just click here and you can rename it whatever you want. To delete a scene, it's just the X here. And then what about creating a new scene? Well, you would just click this button here and you have new, copy settings, linked copy, full copy. Now this is where I was first confused because to me, these last three settings, they sound the same. Copy, copy, copy. What's the difference? So just first to get the first one out of the way, new, if I click that, this has created a completely new scene. It has no environment. It doesn't even have settings. So everything's set to Eevee. If I go to cycles, it's set to CPU, not GPU. Everything is just totally default. Now, I don't want that. So what are my other options? Well, I'll show you the two that I always use. So typically I'm using copy settings or full copy. And I'm not really using linked copy, and let me show you why. Copy settings is exactly like new, except it copies all your settings. So in this case, my render settings, cycle, GPU, how many samples I have, the light path settings, all of that gets copied over, which in 9 times out of 10, I definitely want all of those settings. So that's copy settings, but the scene will still be totally blank. Then there's linked copy. Now I don't really use this one, and let me show you why. So let me just click on linked copy here. And what that does is it creates a total copy of our scene. So we have all of our full environment, our product, all of that. But if I make a small change here, like move that monitor up, then what you'll see is when I go back to my original scene here, or my original shot, that monitor has been moved as well. So there are some use cases you might use this for. Maybe you want those things to be linked, but in most cases when I'm creating a new scene, I'm creating new animations, I'm putting new products in the scene, I'm moving things around. So I don't want things to be linked necessarily. So let me just delete that one. And let me show you the one that I actually will use most of the time, which is just a full copy. And what that's going to do is, like it sounds like, it's going to make a full copy, but it's not going to link any of the data. So when I move the camera and do new animations in my second scene, it's not going to have all of those changes propagated to all the other scenes that it's linked to, which can definitely get confusing. So here I have my copied scene. It's number 1. It copied the name, and then it's just 0.001. So I could change that just up here. Oh, by the way, how did I get this nice little list of my scenes here? This is actually just the outliner, but instead of this being set to the Blender file, which it is by default, actually I think view layer. Instead of having it set to that, I just have it set to scenes, which is really nice. I just have a list of scenes here. I can click on each one and jump around. So let's delete the one that I created as an example there. And then let's go through a few of the shots that I have. So I got the look and feel approved with shot number 1. I create a copy for shot number 2. I renamed that 02 incline. It's nice to just have these numbers here because these are sorted alphabetically. So I have them in order here. And I'll create my new shot. So in this case, if I jump into the camera view, you could see this is just showing the treadmill incline functionality. So I have a nice little animation there. I already have the environment approved. So at this point, I am just focusing on animation. And I'll go through that process with all of my shots. I have decline, push in on console, all of the different things that the client wants me to show. Now, you may ask me, Riley, why not just put this all in one scene? You can animate visibility. You can animate all of the different camera movements. You can animate switching between cameras. And that's true. You could have this all in one scene. The reason I don't do that is basically just complexity, kind of what we were talking about at the beginning. So what happens when a client has a change they want me to make just to shot number 2, maybe the length of shot number 2? Well, I have this issue where I have a cascading effect where I've tried to cram everything into one nice streamlined process. So when I have a small change, like changing shot number 2, it ends up being a really big, overwhelming change for me because it's affected every other shot. So I always try to keep my shots separated by these different scenes. But what about render time? Isn't that super annoying when I have to go to scene number 1 and render it, scene number 2, render that one? I would just be sitting here babysitting my renderings all week long. So how do I render in an efficient way as well? Well, I've covered this tool on the channel before, and it's not going to be the last time I cover it either, because it's a great tool. It's called Blender Q. If you go to my affiliate link, you'll get 25% off, very generous from the developer here. And you support him directly when you buy this tool. You're not paying out to a third-party marketplace like Blender Market or Gumroad. Everything goes to the creator, which is really nice. When you get Blender Q, if you open it up in your end panel, you will see something like this. Let me just go to a new project here. You'll see something like this. You'll have a few buttons and your user guide and an about page and stuff. But what do we do with this? Well, we can start to add our scenes to the queue for rendering. So we have this button, Add Current Scene. We also have Add Current Blend, which isn't for this workflow. And you can add external blend files as well, things that are somewhere else on your machine. But right now, we would just add current scene. And what that does is it gives us treadmill final number 4 right here. So this is our blend file name. This file is called treadmill final. This is our shot or our scene. Number 4, push in on console medium. So that is shot number 4. That's my scene right here. Then I would go to scene number 5 and I would do the same thing. Now the nice thing about BlenderQ is it's stored independently from your blend file. So no matter where I am in Blender, I can pull up this list that I'm creating. So let me add my current scene. There's shot number 5. There's my Blender file. And I can just keep going. Now, each of these have independent render settings. So right now, it's just bringing in whatever my render settings were set to when I added the scene to the file. But we can change all of this. And the nice thing is we can change everything at once, which I'm going to show you now. So let's go ahead and delete this little sample scene we created here. And let me open up the BlenderQ file that I actually used for this project. So this is my treadmill file. Now I have 12 shots or 12 items in my render queue that correlate with the 12 scenes that I have. So you'll see here I have these nice little green check marks, and that's just letting me know, hey, these are rendered already. These are done. So if you render these again, you're going to be replacing something. So I could replace those. I could just come here and uncheck each of these, and that's going to render over the top of wherever my render location is. We also have the render settings, which is really where this add-on starts to shine. So if I open up render settings, I have the render settings for every individual shot. So right now, I have it set to a very low sample count. This is representing, getting approval on shots. So if you're just approving animation, I could even come here, I could change this to a workbench rendering, which is going to render very quickly. Or I could keep it at cycles, and I could come over here to the resolution, and instead of 150%, let's try rendering it like 25%, and that could just be a quick client preview rendering. We also have all of our other settings: denoise, motion blur, persistent data. That's an important one for final rendering, so you're going to want to check it. I talk about this more in the YouTube video where I cover BlenderQ, so if you haven't watched that, go watch that. And then finally, we have file output location, which right now, would just be rendering over the top of my final approved shots, which I don't want to do. But yeah, I could create a new file location. Say within this shot, I want one that's called preview. And I go in there. And now I'm rendering to shot number 1 preview. And typically, my final renderings, I'll always render OpenEXR just because it gives me more flexibility in post and it's faster, and the file sizes are actually smaller, believe it or not, than PNG. But in the case of a quick preview, just for ease of use, I might just set it to PNG. And then I'll render out my image sequences. I'll compile those over in DaVinci Resolve. If I have any render artifacts, if I have any affected frames with strange things happening, then I'll just take note of each of those frames. I'll go through and I'll re-render those particular frames. So that's why I never render out to a video format like MKV. You always want to render out into an image sequence just so you can focus in and delete specific frames that are giving you issues instead of having to delete a whole video file. So so you set your render settings. In this case, we set preview settings here. I hit save changes, and then I would just hit batch render, which I'm not going to do because I don't want to replace my final frames here. And then once they are done, they will each subsequently get a check mark, which will let you know these have been rendered. Now, another nice thing about BlenderQ is not only could I just leave this overnight to do its thing or go make a cup of coffee for my preview renderings, but if I had issues, if I had to change just scene number 2, then I can come in here, I could make the change that I need to scene number 2, and then in RenderQ, I could just uncheck that one and batch render that one shot. So instead of batch rendering everything again, I can just render number 2. All of the images will go to my DaVinci Resolve file all replaced and ready to go, so I don't need to set anything up again. And this is the exact same process that I'll take when I have final files as well. So let's say I've made changes to particular shots. The client's happy with the current state of my preview file. So then I'll just go in here, I'll get everything queued up to render again. I'll go to my render settings and I'll set it to, not frames per second. Where's my resolution? I'll set it to my final resolution. In this case, it'll just be 100%. I could also change my samples. And yeah, then I could just come here, I could hit batch render, and that will render over the top of my preview files. Now, what do we do if we've rendered a final file and the client comes back and they say, actually, we don't like the look of the environment, we don't like the lighting? Now that would be a huge problem because I got the environment approved, then I got the low res animation approved, and then I'm sending them the final. So it's nice to keep very organized in this way because I can clearly cite issues like this. I could say, oh, hey, I usually approach it with a can-do attitude. So I say, yeah, we could change the lighting in the environment, no problem. However, you approved this a week ago right here, and this is where you approved it. I don't mean to be difficult to work with, but to go back and to change that specific thing at this point, because it's already been approved, is going to have a cascading effect. So I'm going to need to go back. I'm going to need to make that change. We're going to need to get it approved again. I'm going to send you a sample rendering, and then we can do the final. So I just need to clearly outline how that breaches kind of the normal process. And with that, I can include a change in scope for the pricing. So I could say, that's just, I could do that, no problem. That's just going to cost this. I'll keep it reasonable with whatever extra mental load and time that's going to put on me. And then I'll also, change scope in deadline. So I'll say, we were on track to deliver this by tomorrow, but with that change, I'm going to need an extra 3 days or whatever it is. So yeah, that's going in a little bit deeper than the scope of the question that I got on the Discord. But hopefully that's a good thorough look at how I keep my shots organized, my shot sequences, my render queue. This is a very organized approach that I take with every client project, and this has been developed because I've been burned so many times, particularly working for an employer that had just a lot of people involved in the feedback process. Countless times I would get to the very end of a project where I've had things approved all the way through, and I would get some feedback from a random third-party extra person that says, oh, we need to change this fundamental thing. So it's important to stay organized. It's important to get things checked off incrementally. No project is ever perfect. You're always going to have little issues with clients. But this is, this should give you your best shot at staying organized and avoiding very, very heavy scene files that have too much in them. So anyway, hopefully that helps some of you out, helps you keep organized with your client projects. Go check out Blender Q. Do the discount link below for the 25% off. Very generous of the developer there. And it's an affiliate link, so you also support this channel, this Patreon, when you use that affiliate link. Okay, thanks for the question. Let me know if I didn't answer anything in specific. And yeah, if you're on the private Patreon Discord, keep sending me your questions. I love to answer them. Thanks.